everybody. Welcome to Strumming with Christopher. I'm Christopher Gallegos with Monterey County Free Library's Gonzales branch. So I've talked about a variety of musical styles at this point. Country, blues, jazz, rhythm and blues. And now we're moving chronologically into what was called the rock and roll era. And some people call that Elvis, some people call that Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, etc. But it led into a lot of the classic rock and Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, all that stuff. And while there were a myriad of directions that these bands took this sound, the very basic sound at its core is the 1-4-5 progression. So if you watch Strumming with Christopher episode 11, you can go back in the playlist on the channel and watch it. I go into a really in-depth discussion about the 1-4-5 progression and the bar chords and how it's set up. So I'm not going to talk about that again, but I am going to talk to you about a strumming pattern, so right hand, that is kind of emblematic of that rock and roll sound. That early rock and roll sound is that type of music was developing. So again, without going into too much detail, watch that 1-4-5 video again. We have the two basic bar chord shapes, which I hope you know by now. So we have the one where you're barring all 6 frets and the bass note is up here on the low E string. And then we have that kind of A shape where the bass note is on the A string and you have this other little bar here with your ring finger. And the 1-4-5 progression, anywhere you start, always starts with that thick bar chord there, goes down to the A shape, goes down 2, comes back. So chord 1, 4, 5. And that's just corresponding to the 1st, 4th, and 5th notes of a major scale. Okay, so we can talk about that at some point in the future, but we're going to talk about strumming today. So this is a sound that you hear in a lot of early rock and roll, whether it's slow or sped up. One of the core strumming patterns is a kind of a 1-2-3, 1-2, 1-2-3, 1-2. Now don't get too hung up on whether you're just doing straight downstrokes or upstrokes. Just think in terms of counting, however you decide to strum it, with a pick, without. So I'll show you an example using a G chord, C chord, and a D chord. And it would go like this. So I'll count and then I'll do it without counting. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And anywhere you go, same thing. So that has powered countless rock and roll songs, classics. And building off of that, there's another kind of pattern that is similar, but has more strums with each chord. So it's a kind of a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. So it would be like this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. So without counting. So that kind of guitar strumming pattern, I don't know this for sure, but listening to a lot of music, it seems like it was a way to kind of be in sync with a very basic rock drumming pattern, which I'm not a drummer, but I've fiddled with them, and it just was this kind of strumming pattern that really drove this music along. And it doesn't seem like a big deal now, but when you listen to some of the early rock songs, again, Elvis, Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, some of the British Invasion stuff, it has a kind of a sameness to it. A lot of the songs sound similar, but they're going off this very, very basic 3-chord structure, verse, chorus, verse, kind of a straight ahead 1, 2, 3, 4 type of drumming thing. So they're very, very basic songs, but they stay in our mind for a reason. They're catchy, right? So go back to Strumming with Christopher, episode 11 on the playlist, 1-4-5 progression, and you'll see the left-hand side of the equation. And add to that this strumming pattern. Just kind of practice and start realizing, I've probably heard this kind of thing over and over and over, whether it's old radio or old records or something that people in your family listen to, or maybe you're a fan. but it's kind of bringing us around to this timeline of music I've been discussing. So we started with the blues, and we moved our way through jazz, country, R&B, boogie woogie, and now we're kind of coming to the era when rock and roll, which back then was a revelation, rock and roll was kind of the result of all this musical evolution. So anyway, just a short little thing to practice, get under your fingers, and onward we go. Thanks as always so much for tuning in and watching. I appreciate all of you, and happy strumming.